Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar on running a business with sustainable development goals, which is organized by Hong Kong Trade Development Council. The language of the seminar will be in English. No SI service will be provided. Should you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box. We'll select some of the questions for our Q&A section later. Aiming to build awareness of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs in short, developed by the United Nations, this webinar will tap on how the Hong Kong startup community can take action and engage on the SDGs when operating businesses. I would like to introduce the speakers of the webinar. Joining us today, we have Mr. Kenneth Kwok, founder and CEO of Global Citizen Capital. Ms. Elise van Middelem, founder and Chief Impact Officer, SUGi. Mr. Žiga Drev, founder and Managing Director of Trace Labs OriginTrail core developers. Our three speakers today will share on the importance of considering the SDGs in future-proof business models and first-hand experience on SDG-related projects. Our first speaker today is Mr. Kenneth Kwok, founder and CEO of Global Citizen Capital. Kenneth is a young SDG advocate whose focus is on the intersectionality of #impact, innovation, and inclusion. At the World Economic Forum, he is the first member from Hong Kong and China to have been elected to the Uplink Innovators Community, the forum's SDG-focused platform, and he has also been appointed as the first engagement champion for Uplink. He is a section contributor at Davos Agenda 2021 on accelerating grassroots innovation, as well as a member of the forum's Global Innovators Community. So now, without further ado, we will now invite Kenneth to share with us on the importance of considering the SDGs in future-proof business models. Kenneth, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I would like to start by saying I'm just a warm-up act for Elise and Žiga, because frankly speaking, I personally can't wait to hear them present on their SDG projects. Well, I guess a bit about myself first. Yes, and thank you so much for the introduction, Vincent. My name is Kenneth. I am Hong Kong born, and I am a very proud so-called advocate for the Sustainable Development Goals. I believe that whether you end up choosing a for-profit, an impact, or non-profit business model, the SDGs can be part of it. And frankly, we owe it to our next generation to do so, because we, especially in Chinese culture, we are raised so that we can give back and leave a better future behind. So my job here today, again, as supposedly engaging in SDGs, is really lay out the framework of how Hong Kong and Greater Bay Area, GBA, startups and scale-ups can actually work and build the SDGs into their blueprint and create what I believe to be a green or an eco unicorn, where you not only achieve a $1 billion valuation, but at the same time, and frankly to me, more importantly, build and enrich 1 billion lives. On that note, I will start with a very simple overview of the World Economic Forum. Again, I'm speaking purely on my personal behalf, and these are just some thoughts of my engagement with the forum. As most of you know, the World Economic Forum is probably a very reputable and very influential public-private partnership, right? Its role really is to develop essentially collaborations across multi-stakeholders to achieve impact and social good, right? Many of you know we have an annual meeting at Davos every year. Due to COVID, we hope at least that 2022, we may somehow meet again, right? And many platforms at the forum, right? Between SUGi, Žiga, and I, we are very passionate about sustainable development goals. But of course, there are 17 of them. right? So guess what? The platform has 18 live platforms, right? To really help us engage on SDGs on a multi-sector level, right? Again, for me, global citizen capital stands for capital in 5 cents. There's the financial capital, there's nature-based capital, there's social capital, there's human capital, and manufactured capital. Whew, I actually got that down. Yes, right? So across these 5 capitals, these platforms support us to continue building impact. And again, just picking one of the many amazing platforms, right? Global public goods. During COVID, this is one of the most important topics because guess what? I think something that we all learned from the last 18 to 24 months is that, wow, we really need to kind of redesign how we do business, how we create, how we manufacture, and how we teach and educate, right? And these are the things which are completely squared away in the public goods because these have to be government led. And again, the fact that HKTDC, Hong Kong Trade Development Council, is dedicating this session on business with sustainable development goals, I think affirm our government's commitment to achieving sustainability. Again, don't want to bore everyone with too much data. I'm sorry, I'm a geek at heart, right? Global extreme poverty is one of those topics. In fact, SDG 1 is no poverty. Well, guess what? COVID-19 has exacerbated the problem of extreme poverty, right? We are on a downward trend. And now look at this graph. Boom, in 1 year, we lost 5 years of progress, essentially, of eradicating extreme poverty. And that's the reality of a global pandemic. And this is why the global north and the global south have to work together. And the uplink community is one of the best platforms for crowdsourcing innovation across all different continents to deliver on the SDGs. Then again, you have another interpretation of what is called new poor, right? Look at these dollar amounts, everyone. Again, I have to say, I and everyone else live in a very privileged environment in Hong Kong compared to most. $1.90, $3.20, $5.50 US per day. I mean, I can't remember the last time in Hong Kong you can even have a piece of bread, like a proper one at a cafe for $1.90, let alone live the whole day on it. So for all of you out there listening, right, please do recognize the fact that in a global pandemic, it's those with the resources and the privilege should be the ones leading the charge of rectifying systemic inequalities, SDG 10, which is on reducing inequalities, right? Yay, uplink slide, woohoo. I feel so much more comfortable now because I'm talking about something I truly believe in, right? So what is uplink, right? Please, I'm sure SUGi and Žiga is like, oh God, there goes Kenneth again, talking about uplink like it's his project, right? Well, guess what? It's everyone's project, right? So uplink started in 2019 at the Sustainable Development Impact Summit, right? At the UN General Assembly in New York. Then in 2020, it launched, right? Becoming the World Economic Forum's first ever open to all platform. So I mean, literally, high school students can become a member on uplink and learn about the Sustainable Development Goals, but not just theoretically. It's about submitting their voices, their perspectives, and more importantly, their solutions to these amazing challenges, right? I'm part of the healthcare and the social justice cohort. I believe Žiga is in the same one with me, but trust me, he is way more innovative than I am. So I'll let him introduce OriginTrails. And of course, Elise with SUGi, right, is on the Trillion Trees Challenge, right? Again, such amazing challenges that we run on an annual basis. Again, as an engagement champion of uplink, it is my job to let the whole world know that there is a platform such as uplink where, again, we're advancing inclusion-led innovation, driving impact. So how does uplink work, right? 4 very simple action verbs. Discover, right? You can literally go online right now at uplink.weforum.org. That's my infomercial voice, right? And join and take a look. Then you can sign up as a member. You can look at all the amazing challenges and the prior solutions, right? And find ways to collaborate, right? Again, there's so much more knowledge inside Uplink, even though it's only been a year and a half, that frankly, I think we should turn all that into a 4-year course, right? For me, if I ever had a chance to turn back time, sorry, Wharton, I may just take the SDG Academy. Our current challenges, Blue Food Challenge, right? How do we harvest things from the ocean and turn them into sustainable food value chains? World-class Education Challenge, right? How do we deliver quality education for all, especially the millions of children who lost the chance to access basic education due to COVID, right? Generation Restoration Youth Challenge, right? As you can tell, these are all amazing themes. And again, please do log in and take a look for yourself. I seem to have lost the chance to do clicking. Thank you, right? And of course, a big part is climate change, right? Protein diversification, circular economy, again, social justice and all that. There are, again, there are 17 SDGs. On the Uplink platform, there is no better way, in my personal humble opinion, to meet with actual innovators like Elise, Žiga, and all of us 100 plus strong at Uplink, and we all help each other. If you look at our community chats, we frequently post updates to our projects. We post calls to action for you to engage, right? Again, it's a very interactive platform, and I hope everyone gets something out of it. Next slide, please. Right. And this year, we celebrated Uplink Innovation Day, end of April, right? Just look at the stats, 18,000 registered Uplink users, 20 challenges launched, 1,000 ideas submitted. For those in Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area and rest of Asia, we are so looking forward to your submissions, because guess what, right? We live in the same world, and innovation should completely be not, restricted to physical borders, right? I believe right now, someone in Ecuador and I could be working on the same thing, and if we join hands, who knows where that impact would be. Next slide, please. Aha, familiar face. I'm very sorry, Elise. I really love this picture, so I'm posting here without your permission. But then again, the whole world saw it already during Uplink Innovation Day, right? Look at how cool Elise looks right here, right? Total hey, I am here to lead the charge for greening society using amazing methods and working with youth, right? And of course, with OriginTrail on the right side, the forum showcased them about tracking medical supplies and PPE through the power of blockchain. For some of you may know, I do happen to have a PPE company in a partnership with a lot of amazing youth in Hong Kong, right? And again, these is why we all friends, because we have a common purpose. We're here to hopefully just make that little bit of change every day, and hopefully that's a waterfall effect later on. Next slide. Right. I promise you, I'm almost done with my part. I can't end this conversation today about SDGs without once again highlighting the amount and the depth of systemic inequities in the world. From PPE to COVID testing and now to vaccines, hundreds of millions of people in this world are still missing out on vaccine equity, right? Exactly, it's a global moral failure. Everyone think, oh, we're just innovators, in our own startups. What can we do to help? Well, guess what? If more of us think like that and actually work together, like through Uplink as well, that's where we actually can create consensus and an urgency to make change. I'll show you how. Next slide, please. SDGs. I know I'm being corny. I'm sorry. If all of us educate our next door neighbor, our friends, our families, why SDGs matter and how adapting and onboarding them and making them part of what we call a response fabric to future pandemics, future inequalities, future crises, right? Then using innovation to make our response more agile, dynamic, inclusive. That's how we can make a difference. Because guess what? Whatever happens in the world later on in 20, 30 years, who knows? But if we all come together and support a global response system, right, then we have hope. And to protect the future youth, I think that's also quite important. Next slide, please. All right. Again, a brief thing about capital. According to the Bank of America, it takes $3 trillion to get us back on track on SDGs. This clearly requires not just the power of startups, but a multi-stakeholder approach, right? Government, sovereign wealth funds, right? Institutional funds. But they're very large elephants. We are the nimble beings, us startups and scale-ups. We can show them how to make their approaches and their capital more efficient, more effective, and more scalable. And this is why me, as well as Elise and SUGi, we're so passionate about the Sustainable Development Goals and SDG action. Next slide, please. All right. And finally, I'll leave you with this. At the World Economic Forum, I am very honored to also work in a alliance called the COVID Response Alliance. Right now, there's 100 so members, nonprofit, for-profit NGOs, think tanks, universities. We're all pooling our resources together across these 10 clusters to support the COVID response, especially the ones ongoing in India, as well as Nepal and other parts of Southeast Asia. So for those of you who are in startups and scale-ups with solutions to support this alliance, please do check out the COVID Response Alliance for Social Entrepreneurs 2021 Roadmap, which is available on the weforum.org website. Next slide, please. I'll leave you with this, with Mr. Klaus Schwab. The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. I hope you, me, all of us here in HKTDC and across the Greater Bay Area all join together and achieve this. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to hear from Elise and Žiga. Thank you so much, Vincent.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. And now, please welcome Ms. Elise van Middelem, founder and Chief Impact Officer of SUGi. As a creative brand strategist, Elise has more than 16 years of experience developing large-scale, interdisciplinary projects from conception through execution for companies including Louis Vuitton, Nike, Samsung, and Art Basel. She is a leader in forging connections between disparate groups by uniting them under a common purpose. Elise will share with us the work of SUGi under the topic Urban Biodiversity and Resilience. Elise, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Kenneth, what to say after you? You've touched upon it all. So thank you for that, Kenneth. First of all, before starting and here sharing my presentation, I just want to say I would totally second and chime in on what Kevin brought up about Uplink. SUGi was one of the 20 innovators under the Trillion Trees Challenge. And I have to say it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us to share SUGi with the world, to also get visibility and to get into a really fun group of peers. where we could exchange and learn from one another. So it's been a fantastic experience. And anyways, I'm very happy here today to share SUGi with you. Yeah, as I was introduced to you, like I started my career at Louis Vuitton and, you know, build out a creative agency. But then I realized, you know, I was one of these many people overwhelmed by the scale of the ecological problem. I wanted to do something positively impactful, but I couldn't find an answer that satisfied me. So I looked around at all these tree planting organizations, but for me, many were monoculture schemes, which aren't truly restorative and can often do much harm. So, and also none of them seemed to offer the ability to track and stay connected to my investment. I wanted to follow the journey of the forest and know that my contribution was making a real difference. And that's, for me, really was the answer. You know, I realized quickly that I wanted to make it easy and fun for anyone, anywhere, to build ultra-dense biodiverse forests, and ideally in urban environments, so they're accessible and easy to be part of. So this is really the basic idea of SUGi. It's a global platform. We'll dive into that in a little bit, and it empowers you to invest in nature and help restore biodiversity, the web of life, you know, from soil to trees to humans, and it brings communities together. The technique that we use within SUGi, all our forest makers, there are 25 today, they embrace the Miyawaki method. Dr. Akira Miyawaki is a botanist in Japan. He's 95 years old right now, and he planted over 40 million native trees. But the technique that he came up with and what he realized was that if we want to create resilience, and resilience within cities, we have to mimic nature, and nature is complex, and through the complexity we create resilience. So his technique is really to create or recreate the ancient forest and bring them back in our cities and in our lives, and really bring back what was once there. So we plant 3 to 4 trees on a square meter, 10 square feet, and through that density you really create that resilience. The way we approach a planting is really in different steps. We don't dig a hole and put a tree in the ground. We really like start with a soil survey, then we go into a species survey, you know, understand what was once there, native species. We do soil engineering, we bring back microbes, we do dense plantations, and then we maintain the forest. And in 2 years only, you get a self-sustaining wild biodiverse forest in your city or in your backyard. The benefits of these forests, they might be small, they might be big, you know, because of the soil, what we start with within cities. Imagine sometimes we have these downpours and the water has nowhere to be stopped. It runs down the streets. I've been in Hong Kong when it was raining really, really hard. It's phenomenal to watch. But through these forests, actually, the soil is like a sponge. So they're incredibly powerful for stormwater mitigation. They're also phenomenal for biodiversity because of the density and the native species. You get the return of pollinators, of birdsong, and birdsong in our life. We all know that, and definitely in Hong Kong, you have that beautiful market. It calms the mind and stirs the heart. It's the biodiversity within us. So they have many, many benefits. I can keep going on that, but let me not bore you with it. Let's go into some examples. This, for example, was a forest we planted in Beirut. That's where SUGi started 2 years ago. I'll show you in the next slide that forest is 2 years today and it's self-sustaining. Australia, we're dealing with, I mean, very tropical climate. In 9 months, that forest is almost self-sustaining. Today it's 18 months, it's completely covered. And then in the US, a different climate. 2-year forest is also self-sustaining though, but not so high as in Australia. So for example, this is a really good example of urban foresting. This was when we started exactly 2 years ago, this time in June, on a landfill site. We took out an enormous amount of plastic and rubble and whatnot, then planted a forest together with the community, and also did actually workshop to really like bond and explain what the method is about. This was a year later. You can see the building in the back, that same building, and this is today. 2 years later, it's dense and it's wild. there's no more maintenance to be done, and it can now in 10 years grow into a exponential canopy layer. This is our community around the world. We do have a forest maker in Hong Kong, and we are planting a school forest very soon this summer, the first one in Hong Kong, just actually behind main city. So we're based around the world. We go from Australia to Brazil, Chile, US, very active in Europe. I'm based in Europe. And then we're also in Africa, and then also a lot in India. You know, in India, we have very, very powerful projects in the sense that we work with 100 schools where we planted 100 school forests. Imagine for those children to reconnect with nature in that way, to learn about native species and the why, but then also like to take ownership and stewardship of their forest. So right now they even do celebrations when the forest turns 1 year. They put balloons in the forest, and some of them are already self-sustaining. It's another powerful message because, as you can imagine, in Maharashtra, the heat waves that they get in the cities are tremendous, and also these forests offer the shade and lower the temperatures around them. So many benefits to it. A couple of numbers. Since we launched in May 2019, 2 years ago, we've got today 90 projects in the portfolio. We've planted close to 100,000 trees. Again, we don't focus on amount of trees, we really focus on rewilding in cities, patch per patch, and that can be small, it can be big. You know, in London, for example, we planted a hectare forest, 30,000 trees, but then in other cities we can do 100 square meters, 300 trees. So it doesn't matter, they're all beneficial to our surroundings. And this gives you a little bit of the feeling what it does, you know, to the community to come together and to really like bond around one forest that is in the neighborhood where they can always come back to. We've had a lot of feedback how it changes people's lives, just to be with their hands in the earth, and also to understand, definitely, like for example in Cameroon, it was phenomenal. Limby is leading this group, and we had some female planters, and they had never thought that as a female you could plant. So these kind of things now, they want to take ownership over the forest, and they find a new mission in life, so which is what we really love. Our real vision for the long term is that we may bring nature closer to everyone anywhere. That would be a fantastic dream to realize. And then last but not least, you can always find out more about SUGi. We have a YouTube site where we film our projects, because this was another thing, and also with the background that I came from, as I told you, like I really wanted to tell the story of the forest. It's not interested in just putting the tree down. It's about telling that story and really why we plant somewhere and what benefits it brings to that community. So as Kenneth mentioned, you know, we were part of the uplink and another couple of awards. So that is it for me. Thank you so much.
Last but not least, please welcome Mr. Žiga Drev, Managing Director and one of 3 founders of Trace Labs, core developers of the open source OriginTrail protocol. Žiga co-founded Trace Labs while finishing his MBA in Ljubljana, and soon recognized the importance of GS1 standards for business data exchange and introduced them to OriginTrail's services. He managed the OriginTrail pilot projects in China and helped designing blockchain-based food traceability blueprint in 2017, which got OriginTrail to become one of the an inaugural member of the Walmart Food Innovation Pipeline, as well as the first winner of the Spark Award. He will share with us the work of OriginTrail under the topic Making Supply Chains Work Together. Žiga, please.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm just going to share screen, and please confirm that you can see it. Okay. Let's see if it works. All right. I
Hello, Seeker.
Yes, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Žiga Drev, as it's been already told, and I'm one of the founders of Trace Labs. And Trace Labs is also the core developer of OriginTrail. OriginTrail actually is not a company, it's rather an ecosystem dedicated to making supply chains more transparent, more trustworthy, and at the end of the day, more sustainable. It's really a pleasure to be here. OriginTrail is also associated with the World Economics Forum Uplink program. We were part of the first cohort for the COVID-19 resilience topic, and we learned a lot in there. And we also got to meet a few exceptional people, including Kenneth, that also invited me here, and I would like to thank him for giving me this opportunity. I'm actually going to take you on a journey from where we actually started from as OriginTrail community. We actually started off in food supply chains back in 2011, first off developing a very rudimentary solution. And then we saw that the same thing can be used in many other supply chains, essentially improving trust, improving transparency, and then contributing to sustainability of global supply chains. Our journey has been quite dynamic. We started off the project in Slovenia, Central Europe, and then going to Italy, and soon after, in 2017, exposing ourselves to certain opportunities in China. In Shanghai, we actually developed the first traceability system based on blockchain for a retailer that also had an online shop. And this same traceability system was later on proposed to the Walmart China Food Innovation Pipeline. And in Beijing 2019, we were selected as one of 3 winners of that cohort. And also this gave us kind of additional encouragement also to get ourselves exposed in Hong Kong. And actually we have a company established in Hong Kong as well, doing traceability and other projects from there. So we are very familiar with Hong Kong. I like Hong Kong very much, although lately it's been very difficult to find an appropriate way to travel there. So hopefully I'll be able to meet you guys soon live. Now, perhaps going back to the purpose of what we're doing, we are strong believers in that sustainable supply chains require certain technology that makes it possible for the data exchanges, trusted data exchanges, to happen. So we believe that sustainable supply chains are only possible if we allow people and organizations to benefit from trusted knowledge exchange. Now we know that supply chains are very complex, global supply chains even more so, and that's why we need to make sure that as products flow, so does data between different parts of the supply chains. And data is everything. We oftentimes say that data is the new oil, and it couldn't be more true than that. And same goes for supply chains. If there is a certain interruption within data exchange in supply chains, we immediately see that there are certain problems occurring, not only linked to products of questionable quality or products that might be impacting environment in a not very positive way, but also supply chains, global supply chains can be disrupted if data exchange is not done in a proper way. One of such examples you may have witnessed in the recent months within the Suez Canal, when the ship was stopped. Now that ship was not blocked and stopped. It did not stop because it didn't have all the modern equipment. It stopped rather because there was a lack of interoperability between different solutions, and those solutions are state of the art, but there was a limited communication. So one example of how supply chains that are not fully ready for the data, for the trust plastic problem description within food supply chains. Now, in 2017, Lockton Food and Beverage report shown that 33% of manufacturers in UK would say that they cannot guarantee that the ingredients they use are not fraudulent and that they are authentic. Now, almost 1/3 of executives in food manufacturing companies would say so. That's a pretty staggering statistics, and food supply chains are definitely not the only supply chains that have this problem. Essentially, it all boils down to lack of connections between different data silos in supply chains, and data is getting increasingly siloed within every entity of the supply chain. And what we need to be aware of is that supply chains are not chains, but supply chains are rather complex networks, and we need to treat them that way. And the solutions that are here to make supply chains more open, more transparent, more trustworthy should be based on principles of inclusivity and also on principles of collaboration, rather than just further siloing data. So perhaps going back to our evolution, I already explained that the whole project OriginTrail started 10 years ago. We started back then by building supply chain solutions for food supply chains mostly. Also got involved into Walmart China's food innovation pipeline in 2017. That also gave us some good exposure and also some encouragement also to establish our business in Hong Kong. And later on in 2017-18, we also launched kind of the first purpose-built protocol, OriginTrail protocol, open source protocol that functions as a middleware, blockchain middleware between different legacy systems that already exist in supply chains and new applications that help elevate transparency and trust in supply chains. We also got into collaboration with the British Standards Institution. British Standards Institution is essentially powering many solutions behind the assurance and compliance sector. So they are one of the most important CE mark providers in the world, and we know CE marks are highly crucial, especially within the personal protection equipment sector that Kenneth also mentioned, as it states that the equipment is safe and trustworthy. And recently, as the COVID struck, we saw that there were plenty of there was plenty of fraudulent equipment being sold to governments, to institutions, to hospitals, to NGOs, and that was a problem that we also are trying to tackle together with the British Standards Institution. We are also part of the many European Union supported initiatives that aim to build a new type of an internet that would be more inclusive, more kind of that it will ensure that personal data is being protected. So this is also one of the aspects that is highly important when we talk about sustainability of supply chains. There are essentially three very important pillars when it comes to improving transparency in supply chains. First one being interoperability. Now, supply chains, as I already said, are very complex. There are literally thousands of different systems that today do not talk to each other in terms of the data exchanges. And in order to make sure that different systems talk amongst each other, we need to use global standards. And OriginTrail leverages global standards such as GS1. Majority of you know GS1 by these EN codes that have been on products since I think the early 70s. And nowadays GS1 standards is also providing some other standards which are crucial for product visibility within supply chains. So essentially, what we are delivering here.
Hello, Žiga.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we just lost the connection, but I
Hello?
think it's fine now. Yeah.
It's fine now. Okay, perfect. Another thing is when we connect information in supply chains, we need to make sure that data is not only connected within one company. We need to make sure that data is connected amongst the different companies and supply chains. And last but not least, when data is being transferred, when information is being transferred across supply chains globally, we need to make sure that it's immutable, therefore that it has integrity. So what OriginTrail is offering is a blockchain-enabled decentralized knowledge graph. Now, knowledge graph bears all those features that are necessary to connect data in any supply chains and make data interoperable, make data interconnected, and also have data that actually is immutable and that no one has meddled with it. Also very important for many companies is that data is still stored in a way that sensitive data cannot be exploited by the competition. So this is also something that we need to make sure is in place. Otherwise, companies are not happy and willing to exchange information. Now, going from more kind of theoretical kind of background of what OriginTrail to a more specific things that we do. OriginTrail is currently being used by British Standards Institution in several different supply chains, from food supply chains all the way to assurance and compliance. And we're also going to see one example later on. We also work with Swiss Federal Railways, essentially helping them to improve traceability of parts. And in that way, we also contribute to the safety of transportation. I didn't mention before, with regards to the British Standards Institution, we're also heavily involved in pharmaceutical supply chains. And this is, again, very much important to the uplinks cohort, where also OriginTrail is taking part in. And this is also one of the kind of sectors that were being heavily present since recently. Also, OriginTrail is being used to allow companies to handle personal data in accordance to the GDPR, so that personal data is revoked when any individual wants to do so, and companies may be using OriginTrail for that as well, and several other examples. Now, going forward, I'm going to show a handful or 3 examples of how OriginTrail is being used within food supply chains and later on in the assurance and compliance. Now, this is a very simple example that can show, that is indicating you as a consumer what you can do when OriginTrail is essentially running in the background, making sure that you receive information that has all the relevancy, all the integrity. In this particular example, you are able to take your phone and scan this piece of chicken and then get all the verified information on the provenance of this specific lot of a product, and also proof that the sustainability claims on that product are actually true. And this is highly important, as some research suggests that 8 out of 10 consumers check the product's origin at the purchase. And this is also one of the reasons why companies are happy to work with us. Another interesting example is a whiskey distillery from Ireland that also recently received investment from Bono, from U2, so the singer. And what essentially they would like to do, they would like to capture all information from the production of grains to the cask of the whiskey, and then protect that information using OriginTrail. And in that way, they would give consumers of whiskey a radical transparency and trust into the products that they will most likely ship in the following years. Right now, the whiskey is in maturation. And this last example that I'm going to show is actually a kind of a very, very large scale example of how OriginTrail is being used by an association called SCAN. SCAN is an abbreviation for Supplier Compliance Audit Network.
Hello, Žiga. I think, Yeah, that's some interruption of from your side. Can you hear us
Again.
clearly? Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yes, I can.
Yeah. We can see you now. Just keep going.
All right. Okay. Yeah, as I said, this is one of the largest scale implementations that we have done to date for the SCAN Association. SCAN is an association of the most important US retailers such as Walmart, Trader Joe, JCPenney. And these companies in accumulation, they represent some 1.5 trillion of purchasing power, which is 40% of the imports to the United States. Now, they use OriginTrail, pardon me, to exchange auditing reports on some 20,000 factories that are importing to the United States. Mostly, these factories are located in China. And these auditing reports essentially tell them if those importers to the United States are following certain sustainability practices that are required for the import to the United States. And OriginTrail is essentially being used for different retailers to exchange those auditing reports without having to repeat audits far away from their country. This is how the application looks like. So this is a kind of mock-up data so that we don't share too much of the sensitive data, but it gives you an example of what parameters companies and also the Department of Homeland Security can see when certain factory is being checked within the so-called BSI's trusted factory application. And all this is actually being supported by the OriginTrail in the backbone. Yeah, so this was a brief overview of what we do at OriginTrail. I hope I was not interrupted too much. This is it's really fun to be able to have presentation across the globe, all the way to Hong Kong. I'm very much looking forward for this COVID-19 epidemic to slowly come to an end, so I'll be able to visit Hong Kong, this great city, once again, and also expand the business that we started a few years ago. And at this point, if you have any questions, you can ask a question here, or you can send an email to one of those addresses that we have listed on the website. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Žiga. Thank you so much. So now we'll move on to the Q&A section. So should you have any questions for Kenneth, Elise, or Žiga, so please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A boxes, and we will pick some of the questions and ask our speakers. So please enter your questions to the Q&A box. So let's take a look into those questions. So the first question is for both founders. So it's for Elise and Žiga. The question is about, you both have mentioned about the Uplink Innovator Program. So he or she would like to ask what you have gained through this Uplink Innovator Program in terms of connections or expansion of your businesses. So perhaps Elise can go first.
Yeah, so for me, SUGi at that time when we applied for the Uplink was very young. It was June last year, and forgive me for the noise, June last year, and so we were about 13 months young, and it was also in the middle of a pandemic, and it can get really lonely at the time. And so what Uplink did was really, again, to be able to connect with this community, to have this interaction and knowing that you're not alone in this, that there are other people also like struggling for nature and trying to do really like the best they can with the means we have. And so what it also did for me is that Uplink and the World Economic Forum created a video about SUGi and the work we do. And that really, really helped also give visibility to work and also build the footprint of our work. So overall, it was an amazing experience. Because of that video, for example, it triggered so many requests to plant forests around the world that it inspired us to create a fellowship or anyone anywhere can become a SUGi forest maker. So we launched it 2 months ago, and then we now found our 10 winners for 2021. And so that's also a way to grow. Thank you.
Great. What about you, Žiga?
Apart from visibility, which was really amazing, when we launched the project to gather data on essential COVID-19 equipment, this crowdsourcing campaign yielded very amazing results. So we were able to capture information on some 16,000 products, healthcare-related products, in that crowdsourcing campaign. So that was one success. Another one was, of course, the visibility that we have gained through uplinks and World Economic Forum's channels. And thirdly, this campaign also encouraged one of our partners to also perhaps be more quick at revealing and also showing other healthcare related solutions that are using OriginTrail to the world. And recently also the British Standards Institution launched descriptions of the solutions that are being right now implemented in dozens of countries in development, and these solutions are also using OriginTrail to allow for traceability of medicines to those third world countries. So all of these things somehow came together into a snowball effect, and hopefully we will see more of such effects in the future.
Great. Kenneth, do you have anything to add on the Uplink Innovator Program?
How much time do I have?
As many as you wish.
No, as I said, like, I think that's the power of Uplink, right? I mean, the fact that both Elise and Žiga, already doing business in Hong Kong and China, check, right? So my first thing is, how can we do business together, ladies and gentlemen, right? So I hope, out of this conversation alone, it gave me so many ideas how global citizen capital or, our nonprofit kits for SDGs can all work together and scale impact. That's one. And number two, and again, going back to the point where there's just so much inequalities that we have to address to the world in physical and mental health, right? The World Economic Forum came up with an article today saying that 40% of jobs in the future of jobs report for the next decade are related in the care industry. That's huge, right? It's actually not innovation, it's care, because people need to be loved, people need to be taken care of, and more importantly, people need to enjoy quality life. And I think the two solutions featured here today definitely support SDG 3, good health and well-being, on top of all the other SDGs that is primary to the core business. So my point is, long-winded answer, right? Don't think that even a startup, right, is restricted to advance the SDGs. Look at these two amazing companies, technically still startup and scale up, and look at their global footprint right now, as it is already. The sky's the limit, and I'm so happy to have met these two amazing SDG aligned entrepreneurs through Uplink. Thank you.
Awesome. So the next question is more about the startup journey of both founders. The question is about, can you share with us any difficulties that you have come across during the start of a business and how you overcome it? Like in general, what are there any difficult? I'm sure there's many challenges and difficulties. Is there like a key ones that's how you overcome it? Perhaps Žiga first? Yeah.
Yeah. I guess when you start a company, you don't start it because it's easy. You start it because it's difficult. So you do expect that there are going to be plenty of difficulties. And there are so many difficulties that you somehow need to find certain joy when you are being faced with those difficulties, from raising capital to entering other countries where to deploy your solutions, to then when you finally start growing to manage the communities that you have. So the more you grow, the bigger the difficulties. It's not you know, the beginnings are the most difficult. It's not true. So in many ways, the beginnings are the easiest because you have this lightness, the audacity of zero, a lot of enthusiasm. But I think one of the most important
Yeah, Žiga. I think
yeah.
you're back.
Again.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say a lot of difficulties, but it's very important for founders to sustain enthusiasm across longer period of time. So that's the most crucial thing to overcome this difficulty.
Awesome. So what about Elise? What's the key challenges that you have been facing when you just started your business and how you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question in the sense that I think challenges are there also to create opportunities and review things. I think for me, it's definitely one bit of advice is taking that leap of faith and almost being a bit naive, because, you know, one can read many studies and cases, and your case is going to be very unique to you. Maybe a challenge that I could say is opinions. Like, it's very interesting, but everyone has an opinion on how you should do it. And so I really stayed very quiet for 1.5 years. Nobody actually knew that I was building this on the side, just because I knew what they were going to say. You know, why focus on biodiversity and why focus on regeneration and not doing carbon footprints and climate change? But yeah, I think today you indicate launches, so that gives you all of a sudden such a tailwind, and we're part of that. So then, you know, you're like, okay, you actually maybe the tip, I mean, just stick to your vision, because focus is important in this. There's many challenges.
Good advice. Stick to your vision. So yeah, and the next question is about, do you have any advice for like our startups in making their first steps in aligning their businesses with the SDGs? Like, how do you have any advice that if startups want to align their business or vision and goals with the SDGs, do you have any advice for them? So perhaps Kenneth first, yeah? Do you have any advice for them, like if they want to do, oh, I would like to do the SDGs, but what are the advice or tips that you can, like, yeah?
No, as most people know, I'm actually quite practical, right? And this is why I love the Uplink community, because one thing most of you may not know is after so many years in finance, I've decided to really pursue education again. So now through Kids for SDGs, I'm teaching in primary school, right? You know, secondary schools, colleges, you name it. So many bright minds. And they're like, Kenneth, I have this great idea. I'm like, okay, do tell me, what's your elevator pitch? And then they finish their 60-second. And I'm like, you know what? Why don't you go to Uplink, right? It's a climate action solution, right? Why don't you go to Uplink, look at the existing 175, whatever it is, solutions globally submitted on Uplink on climate action. And you come back and tell me whether your idea is really that awesome. And the kids are like, oh, come on, that's a lot of research. I'm like, you don't understand something. When I was starting a business, there was no such platform. There was no such library of current successful SDG scalable startups for you to reference. What more do you want, right? And the youth are like, okay, I get your point. Let me sign up. So again, don't want to sound like a grandfather with my long stories. Between the 1,000 solutions and Uplink, I am pretty sure you will find some inspiration in how to align your SDGs. Because at Uplink, each solution is A, you list your SDGs. 2, you list how your solution creates impact towards that SDG in both a numerical and an intangible sense. And finally, I'll be the first to admit it, the ones that actually became innovators, right? They have the full spectrum of solution, right? And these are things that you can learn right now in 25 seconds if you log into Uplink, right, and search, right? But all joking aside, as I said, I'm so grateful because every day I interact with the Uplink community. I feel like I'm going back to school every day, and as long as I pursue my lifelong journey to SDGs, I feel like I'm actually anti-aging sometimes, right? Think like a kid once again. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Great. What about our two founders? Do you have like any like comments to add on that? Like as a founder yourself, what do you think about? Do you have like advice or tips that as an entrepreneur, how can I do business with the SDGs? So perhaps Elise, do you have any like advice for them?
I mean, there's two things for me. I mean, when I started SUGi, I didn't think first of the SDGs, meaning bringing forest into cities. Of course, I mean, it's almost an of course, it ticks the boxes of SDGs. But the way that I was more thinking about it was like, really like living to the values of your company. If you're about people and restoring, what is your model? Like, are you going to be completely for profit? Or are you going to be like the model of like, you know, we take on 100% profit? Like, that's why, for example, the model for SUGi, I really chose from the beginning to have it as a social enterprise model. Just live that within the values of the company were very important for me to also reflect those SDGs.
Great, great. What about Žiga? Do you have any to add on to that?
Yeah, I echo both your thoughts. When you start a business, if you identify what other people care about, you have increased chances for success. And the bigger the group of people that somehow are being positively impacted potentially by your solution, the bigger, the greater the chances for the success of your company. And SDGs definitely are kind of the problematic fields or the impact fields, which not only governments, but actually the whole world feels very, very feels a lot about. And the alignment with SDGs is something that it's always for the startups very worthwhile to take into account, especially when you create a mission statement. And your mission statements should somehow reflect that you care about specific fields that are being touched upon by the SDGs. In our case, that's sustainable supply chains in all senses. In Elisa's case, it's again sustainability, but tied more specifically to forests, and forests are the lungs of our planet, and it's very obvious that this is of high importance to many people, and that's why the chances for success are greater. So for-profit / not-for-profit, I think at the end of the day, it does not really matter. What matters is that you actually offer a solution, a vision that many people care about. And SDGs, obviously, many people care about the SDGs.
Great, great. So the next question is more practical, and it's for Elise. The question asks about, does the SUGi projects partner or like cooperate with any farms in particular? They would like to know if you work with other farms or the other agricultural fields. What are your main partners? How do you do business with them?
So it's a very good question. Right now with SUGi, we're very focused on urban. It's what we started with and what we really want to stay focused on for the time being. However, farming, I mean, is something very at heart of me. Like, I come from a farming family, still actively. So regenerative farming and these forests can do magic to it because of the water tables that they can refill at rapid pace, even after 6 months. It's definitely something that we want to go into sooner rather than later, but one step at a time. Maybe another challenge to bring up. It's like there's so many opportunities, and then you gotta sometimes start with the start.
Yeah, exactly. So and the next question is for Kenneth. The audience would like to know there are many platforms on in the World Economic Forum, and there's one about cybersecurity. So how could like SDG act on this area, the cybersecurity industry?
This person must have read my article on API and cybersecurity.
fan of yours.
First and foremost, I am not a cybersecurity expert. I'll make that very clear. What I do, it's at the forum, is I'm part of a committee focused on advancing digital content safety. So I don't want to speak on behalf of the cybersecurity Global Future Council or other committee members of the forum, right? But let's take a step back, right? Like Elise and Žiga said, there are SDGs and there's the purpose of that SDG, or frankly, the purpose of your company's mission to achieve the SDGs, right? Cybersecurity is one of those issues very dear to me because there is so much online harm and bullying that is happening in cyberspace, especially targeting youth, because frankly, there's no good system at both a national or international level to address online harm. So my goal, for example, a lot of people think, oh, what does cybersecurity have to do with SDGs? I'll tell you three things. One, SDG 3, mental wealth and well-being, right? Your mental well-being is impacted every day as you use the internet and social media especially. And you get exposed to things that frankly, again, may not be suitable or directly against. And I'm telling you, at the UN, where the SDGs were born, we always have this phrase, right? Your gender expression, right? Your gender equality, right? Again, all these core issues of human rights and safety, these are safeguarded, right? In SDG 16, right? Launching and supporting peaceful institutions should be a core pillar of society. If your citizens don't feel safe, right? How can that be a prosperous community, right? And finally, for me, SDG 9 on innovation and infrastructure related to cybersecurity, because guess what? What is security ultimately? It is an ecosystem. And I'm sure someone also planted a question, Vincent, because Mr. Žiga here, clearly is blockchain protocols, right? Definitely can help support, I wouldn't say national cybersecurity issues, right? But I'm sorry, Uplink is also about grassroots innovation. And these issues, frankly, are part of daily social life, starting with news surrounding which product is safe to eat, which of these things that you purchase are actually certified, right? These are things we as human beings care about every day. And SDGs in the end is a blueprint for your daily life, not just for your business or for your whatever reasons. It should be part of our daily DNA. And if everyone believes in that, we have a chance for a better future together.
Great, thank you so much. And I think that's it for our question today. And thank you very much again. And this is the end of the Q&A section. But before we go, maybe Kenneth, would you like to do a quick wrap up of today's section, or say a few words to the Hong Kong startup community to encourage them to join the Uplink community, and how?
I'm gonna flip the question and actually ask Elise and Žiga, because Elise, I'll start with you, because SUGi already has one school in Hong Kong. I hope, as I told you personally, to scale that. What are some of the things you believe the Hong Kong community and HKTDC can help you scale in Hong Kong or the Greater Bay Area? Because I'm actually going to take notes and come back with you with a solution, hopefully, and that we can execute together.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much again to our speakers for your insightful sharing. And I'm sure you have learned a lot from them. And before you go, don't forget that the Startup Express 2021 pitching final will be held on 29th of June. 20 shortlisted startups will pitch their projects, and the 10 winners will be selected. And enjoy the opportunity to build connections, explore markets, seek partners, and enhance brand awareness through a series of capability building, mentoring sessions, and marketing activities. Don't miss out this exciting startup event. Scan the QR code on screen and pre-register for the pitching final live broadcasting section. Last but not least, we would like to hear your feedback on today's section. So please scan the QR code shown on the screen and fill in the questionnaire. Thank you again for joining us today. See you all.